Thank you, Michael. It's good to renew acquaintance again, and thank you, the organisers, for the invite to this debate. It's normally not a good idea to offer advice to some of your rival politicians, but all I would say to Matthew is that he gave an example of a Cork accent, and I'm not that familiar with Cork accents, but I am very familiar with the Paisley accent. I think there's some work needs to be done on the Paisley accent. Just as a word of advice, I think that's, and I think most people would probably agree with that. But however, I think this proposition tonight is a very interesting one, but the practical outworkings of this proposition are, unfortunately, more designed, maybe not by the originators of the wording of it, but would more lead to a division of people rather than a uniting of them. Because I think it's built on a very false premise that, in effect, whether we cut through all of the pink ribbons and nice flowery language, it effectively says there's no Northern Ireland in the future of this proposition. Now, that's not, in my view, and in the view of many people, a sustainable position to hold. Northern Ireland's constitutional position is protected by the principle of consent. And there really is no evidence whatever of a majority in Northern Ireland for breaking up of the United Kingdom. For the past 30 years or so, Nationalist Party support has been broadly static at around 40%. And that assumes wrongly, in my view, that everyone that votes for nationalist parties is doing so because they want to do away with Northern Ireland. So I don't think that has changed very much, and it's not likely to change in the near future either. In fact, all the polls show that there's no majority support whatever for leaving the UK. In my view, there's a responsibility on the part of many of the politicians who advocate such a move that when we look at some of their supporters, and they are getting exceptionally overexcited, and they need really to have their exuberance reined in, because politicians who do that are going to have a major headache in the coming months and years in endeavouring to manage those expectation levels downwards. Because if they don't, there will then be a great difficulty in reconciling what the reality is compared to that over-exuberance that was going in another direction that's not realisable. On a different topic, I noticed just yesterday on the issue of international security, I noticed that on RTE there was a report, and I quote, "The Irish head of the EU's Military Committee, General Sean Clancy, warned that Russia could threaten European countries within the next 5 years." And that was just yesterday. Now, in my opinion, looking from the outside, your country's defence expenditure in terms of percentage of GDP is appallingly low compared to most countries, certainly all the countries in NATO, who are increasing their defence expenditure over the next few years. So I would have to say very gently to the government of the Republic, how long, given what General Clancy has said, how long are you going to expect to enjoy what is effectively a free ride in protection from this aggression that Russia is exhibiting? Some people would want us to jump aboard the neutral bus in the face of General Clancy's warning. Again, I don't think that's realistic. To move on to another topic, we saw a few months ago just in the presidential election, and I met your president this morning. I saw that the boundaries of acceptable identity remain very narrow in the Republic, because a presidential candidate who didn't win was subjected to sustained public vilification because of her family's connection to an Orange Order period. That's a different story, but it tells a story of its own. You see, my view and the view of many people is this: Northern Ireland is changing. There's no doubt about that. But it's a place at the moment and increasingly a place that people can be British, Irish, Northern Irish, or all three, without the state demanding any conformity to one of them. But not so in the Republic. The nature of politics effectively in Northern Ireland is that we move forward now slowly, haltingly, hesitantly, but by agreement. That's how we make progress. And we've seen in the Northern Ireland Assembly how slow that can be, the difficulties that provides. But no one has come up with another alternative. It's really a bit like a story I heard a number of years ago about an aged person who was asked, how does it feel to be old? And they said, well, it's not great, but it beats the alternative. And you know, it's a bit like that. The Assembly and how we run Northern Ireland isn't great, but it sure beats the alternative. That's how we have to move forward. And the proposal that is before us tonight, I know some people would say it's designed to bring people together and to build peace, but it would do the opposite. It wouldn't just be a failure in terms of not fully achieving those aims. It would do precisely the opposite. It would drive people apart and make peace more difficult, not people embracing the whole process of peace. In fact, it's disagreement in spades rather than agreement, and that's why it's destined never to succeed. The real priority in Northern Ireland is to work and build the strengthening relationships that we have in all directions to improve everyday lives for everybody that we serve. We benefit from the fiscal strength of the UK, from a healthcare system with all its faults, which is free at the point of use, to a social security system that protects the most vulnerable. The question before you people tonight in the Republic is not ideological, it's practical. Are families in Dublin, Cork, Galway, elsewhere, are they going to be in favour of and vote for more tension in Northern Ireland, not less, more animosity and division, not less, more problems spilling out rather than less, and being asked to pay significantly increased taxes to get all of that? Even economists who fear constitutional change acknowledge that subsuming Northern Ireland would require the Irish government to find billions every year. Some of them would say just to stand still. I would say to go backwards. That means higher taxes or reduced services. Unionists are right to ask voters here, what do they think about that? We have made progress. Slow and faltering, yes, but it's still progress. This proposal, rather than helping on the way to further progress, would hinder it, harm it, and destabilise it significantly. Thanks for your invite.